So for problem number 15, it says the number of students infected with the flu on the college campus after T days is modeled by this function here. P of T is equal to 160 over 1 plus 39 times e to the negative 0.3 t. What is the initial number of infected students? Now, this is not a hard problem, but I could see it's one of those problems that's so simple that it might be confusing. What does t represent in this function? This is a function of t. What does t represent? Yeah, well, it's time, right? It could be days. But yeah, it is days because it says t is days. But really the reason they use t is that it's time. Now, the initial value occurs at how many days? At 0 days. So what we're interested in is when t equals 0. So if I looked at this and I had 160 over 1 plus 39 times e raised to the negative 0.3 times 0, because we're looking when it equals 0, what does all this mean? Well, what is this right here? E to the negative 0.3 times 0. What does that end up becoming up here in the top?
1.
Yeah, everything in green becomes 1, right? Because technically it's like e to the 0. Anything raised to the 0 power is 1. So I've got 160 over 1 plus 39, which is 160 over 40, which reduces to what? 4. See how that works? Are there any questions? Okay, good. Moving right along. The next problem is 23. And as I go over these, if you guys if you need to post another question on the discussion thread, try to do that, because remember I have to go over some more problems 7th hour as well. Okay, so if you have a question on a problem that isn't on the list, there's still time to post stuff. So now this one, it says graph the function, describe its position relative to the graph of the basic function. So what they want us to compare this to is the parent function, which is just f of x is equal to the natural log of x. And then we are going to graph f of x is equal to the natural log of x minus 2. Yeah, maybe I should move that out of the way. That looks a little sloppy. Maybe we'll write it down here. F of x is equal to the natural log of x minus 2. Now I got a question for you. Before we graph this, what do you think it should look like? What do you think that minus 2 inside the parentheses is going to do? Yeah, you guys are making the hand motion. You want to say it out loud? Yeah, it should be some sort of horizontal translation, right? We should shift it to the left or right. Okay? You said left. I think it's going to be right? Because remember, with the horizontal shift, it's always the opposite direction. So since this is a negative sign, we want to think that it goes in the negative direction, but in reality, it kind of shifts to the right. So does anybody in here remember what the natural log of x looks like? Do you? No? Okay. Well, let's see what it looks like. So if I pull this up, let's clear this out, let's clear this out, and we will do this of this natural log of x, zoom standard, and that's what it looks like. And our prediction was it should look exactly like that red line, but it should shift which way? 2 units to the right. So let's see. Natural log x minus 2. 8. That's what it does. All right. So which one is it then? Is it C
D.
or D? D. Now, why is it not C?
Because it says move left 2 units.
Yeah, right here, if you look at C, it's the right graph, but it says that it moved left 2 units. Okay, D's the right answer because it moved to the right 2 units. So D, I think, is the right answer. Whoops, let me hit my, yep. So the graphs were correct on both of them, but the actual verbiage was not correct. By the way, we should all be in courtesy mode unless you guys are adding problems to the discussion thread. All right. So that's problem number 23. Any questions on that? No? Okay. Next one is problem number 31. Whoops. Got a little happy there? You guys laughing at me? Oh, what's going on? All right. Problem 31, it says match the function with its graph. Again, I suspect this should be one that you should be able to plug in your graphing calculator and get the right answer, but I suspect the problem is when you put it in your calculator, you may not be entering it correctly, which is probably why it's on the list. In other words, you guys put this in your graphing calculator, you didn't get the right answer, or the graph you had didn't match up with any of the multiple choice. The calculator will only graph it the way that you want to. So what I would like for you guys to do is to tell me how to graph it. Okay? So I'm going to hit clear, and I'm going to hit clear. It's log. Now what do I hit? Well, basically, I just need to enter this in the calculator like this. Okay? Now, if you don't do the second set of parentheses, it's not quite the same. It's not going to give you the same answer. So what I would do is I would hit X. Now, normally when we say X in front of the parentheses, what does this mean? Doesn't this mean that we're multiplying that by everything in the parentheses? So just to make sure that I'm doing this correctly, I'm going to hit the times symbol, and then I'm going to enter it in like this. -2. Then hit graph. Okay? That's what it should look like. Now let's see if we get one just like that here. Which one is it? C, right? Let's see. Okay? Are there any questions on that? Okay. So when we do the practice test, guys, the whole point of this is to learn how to enter things in the calculator. This one is one problem that just you weren't able to get the right answer because you weren't entering it in the calculator. So how do we prevent that, right? Because we want to get this right on the test. Well, it starts when we take notes. Well, we're taking notes in class and Mr. Adams has his calculator up on the screen like this, and I'm plugging away all this stuff. You need to have your calculator in your hand, plugging it in, making sure that you understand how to do it when we take notes. And then when we do the example problems, the homework, you need to have your calculator in your hand, even if we're doing the homework problems here in class. You need to get practice entering that stuff in the calculator, okay? When you guys were young and in the 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, probably up until your freshman or sophomore years, a lot of times the teachers, your math teachers would tell you don't use a calculator because we want you to use your brain, right? Because you got to memorize certain things and you got to be able to calculate things in your head. But you guys know how to do that now. And now we've reached a level of mathematics that we can't do everything in our head. I suppose we could. But it's helpful to use the calculator to double check your work. So now you have to use your head and your calculator. So don't be hesitant to do that, okay? Let's move on to the next one, problem number 33. All right. It says find the amount accumulated after investing the principal P for T years at an interest rate of R. Alright, now it should work. So what we want, go ahead and tell me what that is. So the amount A is equal to P times 1 plus R over K. And then what do I put up here?
KT.
KT. And so what I'm going to have is I'm going to have 1,000, 1 plus 0.09 all over 1 times T, or 1,000, 1.09 raised to the T. Now, except when I enter it in the calculator instead of T, I'll use X. Does that make sense? So I'm going to say 1,000 times 1.09 raised to the, how many years? 7. And I get 1828.04 is what it would be if we rounded up. And that's correct. Does anybody have any questions? Are there any additional questions that weren't listed on the discussion thread that you would like to cover in class? Anyone? No? We're good?